Welcome everybody, this is the Property Podcast, it's episode 284 and we're back looking at our investors' journeys. Let's listen to the story so far.
I lost a long-term job and was forced to sell my London flat. So it was with the equity from that I purchased my first two investment flats.
The bridging finance was so painfully slow, and then the solicitors then slowed it down because there's two sets of solicitors, one for the bridging finance company, one for me. So that was something I didn't know going into the limited company structure.
We were 24, we were renting the rooms out to young guys, and we were just partying with them day and night.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday property investors come together to be informed and inspired. And what a great episode we've got today, following up with investors just like you, all at different stages of their property journey. So we're going to see how they're getting on. We've also got a global news story for you. And if you stick around to the end for Hub Extra, we've got an outbreak of civility on the internet.
Well, first up is our news story, and a really interesting news story. And this story is on the BBC website, but it's about New Zealand and their property market. And they have now banned foreigners from buying existing homes in the country, which is a major step. It was a really tight vote, but it's been voted through. Overseas investors still can buy new property, but existing property, they can't. Now, Rob, it's not because we're really now interested in the New Zealand property market that we bring this forward to everyone's attention. But possibly, is this a glimpse into our own future here in the UK?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's one thing that's never really been on the table, but you could see in markets like London it actually having a real impact, because one of the reasons that London came back so quickly from the last crash is that it was seen as a safe place to store money from lots of people overseas. And you have the same effect in lots of global cities. It's the same thing in Vancouver, New York, San Francisco, and also in New Zealand, which we've not really talked about ever on the podcast before. But house prices there in the major cities like Auckland are bonkers. It makes London's growth look pretty sedate, really. So I think it's the kind of measure that a lot of people intuitively don't like. It feels a bit protectionist and anti-globalist. But if the government is still struggling to wrestle house prices under control, who knows? It is something that we might see in the future.
You could definitely see this having merit in some parts of the property cycle if you're trying to cool things down. But turning on and off investment from overseas isn't something like flicking a switch. It's not that simple. So is it a good thing? We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it and we'll report back if it creates more headlines, either working or not working. But you can definitely see parallels between New Zealand and our own property market. So it is definitely one worth watching.
Just before we catch up with our intrepid investors on their journeys, I want to let you know about a survey that we've got running at the moment. This is something we've put together that is a real opportunity for you to make your voice heard. One of the many great things about the Property Hub is that there are thousands and thousands of hubbers. And that means that there's a real opportunity for us to work together to get our voices heard and let the media and ultimately the government know what it is that we think as investors. So we put a survey together. It's really quick to take. There are only 6 questions. They're all multiple choice. It'll take you 2 minutes tops. And it means that rather than just sitting around getting angry about something, you can let the world know what you think. And we are going to spread this far and wide. We expect the results of this to get a lot of coverage. And of course, we're going to be talking comprehensively about the results of this on a future podcast episode as well. So we mentioned this in Hub Extra last week. Over 500 people already have taken this survey. If you haven't, do it now. It'll only take a minute. Just go to thepropertyhub.net/share. That's thepropertyhub.net/share. All right, how time flies. Almost 6 months ago now, we started speaking to hubbers just like you and following them on their very own property journeys. This is a really important series of episodes because in the past, we've interviewed very accomplished people who've achieved amazing things. They're very far on. They've been in property for a long time and they've built up unbelievable portfolios. But if that's all you listen to, you can get the wrong idea. You can believe that you have to be special somehow to invest in property, that only a select few have what it takes. We wanted to show what normal people, just like you, are doing in the world of property. The hubbers we'll hear from have all got different goals. They're all following their own paths. But what they've all got in common is that they don't have any superpowers. They don't have genius level IQ, as far as we know. They're just normal people like you who are in the course of taking action and changing their lives with property investment.
So this week we're going to hear from Steve, Sarah and Ian and see just what they've been up to for the last 6 months. So first up, we had Steve.
My name is Steve. I'm 36. I live in London and work in radio.
Last time we spoke to Steve, he was focusing on a particular part of the UK that probably doesn't get enough attention from an investment point of view. So it's really interesting that this is his focus point.
Though I live and work in London, I have invested in Kent, across the North Kent coast, where I did have, last time we spoke, 3 buy-to-lets, 1 and 2 bed flats across neighbouring towns going down the North Kent coast, 1 in Whitstable, 1 in Herne Bay and 1 in Margate.
Okay, that was Steve 6 months ago. So what's happened since then?
Well, as planned, I've added 1 more single let to my portfolio, so there's now 4. It's another neighbouring town along that North Kent coast strip. There's a lot of hype around Margate right now, and prices are going up accordingly. So I've gone for the, relatively speaking, the neighbouring town, Folkestone.
So Steve's really focused on his target area. Last time he was pretty low on capital, so it'd be really interesting to see how he's managed to do this again. How's he got that next investment?
I raised the capital for this last single let in Folkestone through a mixture of saving very hard and monies released from a refinance of 1 of my single lets. So there's 2 of the 3 remaining single lets that I haven't touched, I haven't refinanced yet. And 1 of those, I'm now pretty close to getting all my money back out that I put in.
So Steve's drawn on some of his equity, which is a really powerful strategy, as we've heard many times before. But also powerful is just saving hard, a bit of delayed gratification there. He's done the hard thing and got himself to where he needs to be. And clearly, Steve likes to feel the burn, because not only is he saving hard, he's given himself a rule as well.
My self-imposed rule was to only take out as much as I've put in. I've kind of getting my deposit back and recycling again. And I haven't got to that point yet. 2 refinances in. So after 4 years, 2 refinances. I'm pretty close, but I'm probably about 2/3 of the way there with this 1 flat that I've refinanced. And I think in that way, I've learned that it's very difficult to recycle deposits just by relying on the market. Pretty much all my flats so far have been vanilla buy-to-lets. I've just bought and rented them out, done very little to them. I haven't really put much work in up front to raise the value up front.
Now you hear Steve say vanilla buy-to-let, but this really shows Steve's progress. He's now at a stage where it's not terrifying anymore. He's really growing as an investor, but he's probably being a little harsh on himself because, granted, he hasn't done any refurb work, but you still have to put the work in.
Yeah, but by that, what I mean is I really researched very hard, and I feel like I know my area, that little North Kent coast strip, very well indeed. And I certainly researched. I find that one of the most fun parts of this whole business. But I haven't refurbed. I haven't added any value up front in that way. I've literally just bought a decent value, maybe a little below market value, but I've just bought and rented out. And so I found it difficult to pull out as much money as I'd like, certainly second time round.
When we spoke to the Hubbers we're following on their journeys nearly 6 months ago, Steve was the only one we spoke to who had a cash flow figure he was aiming for. We actually suggested to a couple of the others that they should do the same because it's really powerful to have something to aim for. And Steve was going for £2,000 a month, which weirdly seems to be a magic number that we hear a lot. So how's Steve getting on with his progress towards that target?
I think I'm getting there. I think I'm about 3/4 of the way. I think I'm very close to 1,500 a month net. Having done 4 single lets and pretty much, as I've said before, pretty much vanilla single lets where I've just purchased them after a lot of research, but I haven't actually done much to them. I've just purchased and rented them out. I'd like to be a little more ambitious next time round. I think it's a while away yet, but I really like to have a go at an HMO. So I think that's my next step now, is an HMO. It's just something that I've read loads and loads about and just really interests me. I feel like obviously it's about finding the right deal and something that works. I have an added advantage here that although I live and work in London, my parents are in that area and they're both retired. And it's become a kind of a running family joke that perhaps they might like to come out of retirement and manage this HMO on a part-time basis, or certainly actively help out on a day-to-day basis. So if that was to be the case and we could work as a bit of a team, that would be a real bonus. It's certainly something that I'm looking at really seriously.
Steve is obviously feeling a bit more confident. Simply buying flats to rent is not challenging for him anymore. He said himself that it's time for him to be a bit more ambitious. So I'm really keen to hear where Steve thinks he'll be next time we chat.
Well, realistically speaking, I've got this far by, other than refinancing one of the flats or getting as much out of it as I can, I've got this far through savings and savings alone. And I'm pretty much out now. So there's going to be a period of saving again. And I'd like to refinance another of the flats in my portfolio.
What's becoming clear here is that Steve has really grown as an investor over a short period of time, which is really brilliant to see. So we wanted to find out over the last 6 months, what's he learned?
I think what I've learned so far is I've purchased 4 vanilla buy-to-lets in that I've just kind of bought them and rented them. And so I think when you go to these kind of seminars early on, yes, you learn a lot, but you are kind of sold a dream that it's really easy. And, you know, you invest in a buy-to-let, 2-year fixed rate, 2 years later, you recycle your deposit and you go again. Clearly, it's not as easy as that. And if you're literally relying on buying below market value and relying on the market, well, in my experience anyway, it's very hard to pull out anywhere near your full deposit after 2 years or even 4 years. And so I think I would, knowing what I know now, I'd purchase with a mind to add in a bit more value up front. So perhaps buying somewhere that could be refurbed, and then 6 months down the line, you could have more realistically have a go at refinancing.
I couldn't agree more with Steve. There are so many courses and seminars out there that just promise amazing results, but really neglect to tell you the work that has to go in to achieve them. Great results don't happen with no work. Just because you go on a course for a weekend doesn't mean suddenly loads of great results are going to fall in your lap. You have to do things right. So you can achieve great results, absolutely, but there is work to be done. If you're refurbing, you have to go and do that refurb and manage that process if someone else is doing it for you. Or if you're getting a great deal, you have to put the effort into finding it. Not every property deal you're going to look at is great. In fact, most won't be. So Steve's right. It's not easy. If you want great results, you have to put in a great effort. But that seems fair to me. So we're really pleased with how Steve's getting on it. It's great to see so much progress in such a short amount of time. So next up, no pressure, we've got Sarah.
My name's Sarah and I'm 42 and I'm currently living in London and Teddington.
Let's have a quick reminder of where Sarah was when we last spoke 6 months ago.
Last time we spoke, I had 2 buy-to-let properties and was in the middle of my very first flip.
And the big question is, what's happened since then?
I have finished off the first flip. We took that to market at the beginning of March and had it all staged, and it sold within 11 days. Well, the sale was agreed. And then when the sale was agreed, I started looking for the next one, which I have got going through at the moment. It is a 2-bed semi-detached house, so it's a bit of a bigger project. That's where we're at, really.
Wow, what a fantastic bit of news. Well done to Sarah there. What a result. Flipping properties can, of course, be a great way to generate chunks of cash, but we know that it's not easy. So we wanted to dig in more and find out how she did it.
So the property that I flipped was in Sheffield, in Fulwood, which is a really nice suburb. And it was a 2-bed top floor flat in a purpose-built building. And it had been sort of 1970s decor and needed a complete sort of gut, which we did, remodernised it and staged it so it would suit a young sort of professional.
Okay, wow, a big project. Was Sarah there with her toolbox day and night, or did she get a bit of help with this?
I had Simon, who I had on a profit share system. He was my project manager up there, and he did the day-to-day work and organised the trades and did a lot of the graft himself. He was fantastic, and I'll be working with him again on the next one. And we worked so well together that he's going to invest some money in the next one as well.
So a bit of help then, and help that's turned into a partnership, which is great. But I'm sure Sarah didn't just sit around at home in London hoping everything would magically sort itself out in Sheffield.
I would spend a couple of days every week or so going up to Sheffield and just going through everything with him and picking up the paintbrush when needed, doing all odds and sods and making sure it was on track and all the design elements and the staging and so forth.
So this is great to hear. We've recently had our episodes on working with builders, and we talked about how key communication is, and clearly that's not missing here.
So how long did it take to do the refurbishment?
I'd say 9 weeks. We really were sharp on it. As soon as we took the keys, we were in there gutting it, and I had all of the design elements done previous to that. So it was a matter of just having the stuff ordered and arriving, and the guys being on site to put it all into place.
We also wanted to know more about working with a project manager. Did it make things easier?
It actually clicked into place really fast. I think we probably learned how we work with each other. Like, he brought sort of some design elements that I wouldn't have thought of to it, and I controlled the budget as much as I could. So, I mean, he's probably not the best in terms, and he would say this, the budget, whereas that's something that I keep a very sharp eye on in terms of what is a nice to have and what's a must have, what's going to sell the flat, and what's just, something that you personally would want.
So hard work done, the house is ready. And did Sarah just chuck it on the market and cross her fingers?
One of the key things that I have as part of my team up there is I've come across a valuer that I use, and he came in and valued the property at the very beginning before the work was done, and he gave me a really lowball kind of like worst case scenario price. And I had 3 agents that came in, and he came in at the least. But I really trusted him because I knew that he was going to give me the right price when it came to time to putting it on the market. We made sure we priced it quite aggressively in the marketplace because there had been comparable properties up there that were sticking on the market, which I didn't want. So yeah, we priced it right. I didn't go for the top real estate quote. I went for what I thought was realistic and where the numbers worked. And yeah, it seemed to work because it did sell sort of within 11 days. The sale was agreed, and that's key for me.
Sarah was smart and didn't get greedy. Like Steve said, there'll be people out there who sell you dreams, but they don't necessarily align with reality. In this case, Sarah could have got carried away with the high valuations. It's understandable. But what's great to hear is she kept her head, priced accordingly, and, most important of all, has found success. Now, Rob and I love a deal, and I've been known to watch the pennies, but property is not always doing everything as cheap as possible.
You want to have a good quality product that sells itself. One of the key things that I did right through the process was I watched what was on the market in terms of comparables, and I made sure that, looking at how long they took to sell, if anything was sticking on the market, I'd find out why it was sticking on the market and make sure that it wasn't something that would be the same issue in our property, and just generally try and find a way to set that property apart, which we did with the staging. There was nothing sort of on the market that was quite as modern and, with a bit of a Scandinavian twist to it. So it kind of was fresh and clean and would appeal to the young professionals, and just wasn't anything out there like that. So that's how we sort of tried to set ourselves apart with this one.
Again, Sarah's been really smart here. We talk a lot about the importance of research, and she researched hard at the beginning, which is critical, but she kept that up the whole way through and made sure that she ended up with a product that's going to stand out. And clearly that's done the trick. And she knows her market as well.
Part of that is having Chris, who the valuer that I use, on side. In fact, for the next project, for all of the projects that I've anything that I think might be a potential project for me, I send the information straight to Chris, say what is the top price that I could get for this, what is the bottom price I would get for this if I did blah, blah, blah to it, and he'll send me back that. I can then put those numbers into my spreadsheet quite confidently at the moment because he knows the market up there well, and work out whether it's worth putting an offer in on that property. So he's been really instrumental in making sure that I feel confident going into the next one as well.
So Sarah's having a great time flipping so far. Is the plan to carry on?
There's a long-term plan in that, and that is something that the Robs sort of made me knuckle down on last time, which was good. But the plan is basically to do 2 flips, and then the third one will be a property that we will hold. And the idea is that we then get enough sort of equity in the company so that we can do more than one flip at a time, because obviously it takes such a long time in the sales and purchase process that if we've got more than one project going at a time, it just keeps the momentum going, and that would be great to have multiples. And that's the aim, really. And just, every third property, hold it and add that to the rental portfolio.
So capital is obviously very important. But most of all, it seems like Sarah's just really keen to keep her momentum going.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely the momentum needs to keep going. I mean, after we bought the first buy-to-let, our momentum was there, and we got the second one. And then we kind of lost a bit of momentum, and it's taken a year or two to kind of go, right, let's get back into this and make property part of our long-term strategy in terms of retirement and things like that.
Sarah had great advice last time we spoke, and we wanted some more words of wisdom again from her this time. We're greedy. So what advice would she give to anybody looking to start out?
I think there's a few things that you should be aware of before starting. One is hard graft. It's not going to make you money straight away. You want to go into it realistically and think, the first one's a test one, see how much you can make, and make sure that you do make something, and then learn from that one and take those lessons forward to the next one. The other thing I'd say is the people that you have on your team are critical. Simon, for me, who is my project manager and soon to be investor, is critical in it. He is excellent at managing the trades, so that helps. Chris, my valuer, makes it far easier to put numbers into my spreadsheet confidently. So it's key to have someone like that on side. And the other thing I'd say is really important is to monitor your comparables right through the process, because you don't want to get into a situation where you have to reduce your price because it makes the property look stale, it's going to hang around, and every month you're going to be eating into your profit with your bridging finance or however you're financing it.
Once again, great advice from Sarah, and an awesome update on her journey. I mean, what a jump in experience, knowledge and confidence in such a short time. It's not easy, but she makes it sound like that. She's done a great job. Well done, Sarah. So finally, we've got Ian L.
I'm Ian Large, 36 years old, in Chelmsford, sunny Essex.
Let's have a quick reminder of where Ian was 6 months ago.
So the plan in February was to get the 2-bed house that we'd just started built, remortgage out of that to be able to fund some more buy-to-let property, and also get started on another project that we had lined up, which is a conversion of a 9-bedroom HMO that we had. And then we were planning on remortgaging out of that, continuing developing, and also buying more buy-to-let property.
Some pretty ambitious plans there. Let's see how Ian got on.
We have managed to pretty much finish the 2-bed. We were held up with some drain diversions that needed to go into the road, and the authority wanted an awful lot of legal agreements to do that. So the building's finished, it's on the market. We're looking for a tenant now, and we'll be able to remortgage out of that. Unfortunately, in the meantime, my business partner has decided to move from Dubai to Ireland and needs the money that we financed the 2-bed with, plus the profit, in order to be able to buy a home for himself. So that's put a slight delay on the adding to the portfolio plans.
Okay, things change and that's fine. Life happens and nothing in property ever goes completely according to plan. So what does Ian's next 12 months or so look like now?
We bought in 2013 a 9-bedroom HMO. We've managed that for the last few years, but it always had land on the side of it. The exit strategy was always going to be to build on the end of it. When we started the building company in 2016, we thought, let's accelerate those plans and let's do that conversion now. So starting work on the conversion, so that would be 3 lovely, beautiful, shiny houses at the end of it. Now, the original plan was to remortgage out of those, keep them all, and use the money from there to keep on developing. Although, because it's 3 properties on one title, looking at all of the options, there's no sensible way of splitting the title. So we've looked at all conceivable options for splitting up the titles to make them easily mortgageable individually, but that's just not going to work. So we've now come to the conclusion, as much as it'll break our hearts to let it go in such a key location in Chelmsford, to build it, sell it all. Once we've sold all 3, we'll have a war chest to the tune of £450,000, which we're going to use as a cushion for future developments.
Ian's adapting to everything changing around him, and he's doing some really advanced plays here from a capital point of view, but also strategy too. We want to know more about who Ian has got around him and help him in do these things.
We did have a broker that would worked with us closely for many years, but sadly he passed away recently, leaving us in a position where we didn't really trust anything that was sort of coming from the intermediary that he had put us in touch with on the development project. And we've got a partner in the building company who's been building developments for 21 years. He knows what he's doing on the building side. Good solicitor is wonderful. The agent that we work with is fantastic, incredibly helpful. We've found a new broker who's been wonderful and has been helping out on the trickier side. And we've been working with a great accountant for some time. So the power team is absolutely critical to what we're doing. The rest of it, we're learning as we go and just trying to make the right decisions.
Obviously, Ian doesn't know it all. Nobody does. But he's sensible enough to surround himself with people who can guide and advise him. And having these people in your team is so critical. Another thing we wanted to know is if Ian is moving around the country or focusing on one area.
I mean, we know the local area. We're all local to Chelmsford. So it is the easy answer for having a great handle on what sells where for what. Although land prices are insane and good deals are incredibly hard to come by. If it's in the press, it's in the price, as our broker used to say.
So with Ian being as active as he is, we wanted to get his thoughts on where he thinks we are right now in the property cycle.
We're in the middle of some sort of wobble. A lot of what I'm seeing come up again and again on Rightmoves is coming up as reduced, certainly at the higher end. The bottom end of the market seems to be moving reasonably well, but land seems to be sticking around a little bit longer than it was a few months ago, and property seems to be hanging around a little bit longer than it was. All the more reason I want to build up a cash reserve to be able to move on things.
Ian mentioned a wobble there, and that sounds to me like a reference to the 18-year property cycle, which we are big proponents of. We've said before that we think we're coming up to the wobble phase at the moment, and timing-wise, that's exactly what the cycle predicts. So it's always interesting to hear from people on the ground in different parts of the country, and to hear that Ian is seeing something similar. The great thing about the property cycle is if you know where in the cycle we are, there are always opportunities to be had. And it sounds like Ian's not fighting the cycle. He's not battling against the market. He's adapting his strategy to suit where we are right now. And that makes a lot of sense.
Rob, I'm so glad we started these journey podcasts. They're a little bit more intensive to put together, but so valuable because you can learn all the theory, but sometimes you just go out and do it. And to hear from different people doing completely different things, but finding their own versions of success is really inspiring. And not just for the listeners, you and I listen to what these people are doing and think, God, we've got to keep on our toes. There's some really impressive people out there. But for me, what makes them really impressive is they're just normal people like you and I.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important to focus on people who are in the process right now, not people who've made it and are looking back on what they've done, people who are right in the thick of it, because you get to see what it's really like. And as we've heard, there are challenges. I'd be astonished if we caught up with everyone and everything had gone absolutely swimmingly. But there are some really big wins in there as well, which is just amazing. 6 months is not a long time. If you're not focused and if you don't have a goal to work towards, it can just be gone before you even realise it. But as we've heard, if you do have that focus and you are willing to put the work in even when it's difficult, you can actually achieve really big things in that period of time as well.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Rob. Goals followed up by action. There's no secret formula here. It's having a target, having a plan, or a goal, whatever you want to call it, and then doing something about it. Just dreaming all the time, nothing's going to change in your life. You may enjoy your passive dreams, but you've got to do the action at some point. And this is a theme that's not a new one. It's something we've talked about the podcast over many years now. But get the plans in place. You've got enough education if you listen to the podcast. Just take the action. If you haven't yet, the year's not over. You can still win this year. Go and do something, and you might surprise yourself with the results you get. So, Rob, do you fancy talking about Brexit?
I feel like I need a minute to prepare for that. So Hub Extra is coming up. But first, let's have something completely non-controversial, which is our appreciation for someone who's taken the time to leave us a 5-star review.
So thank you to Adrian, a wonderful hubber, who's left this review. Been listening to the podcast now for just over 4 months, and Rob are entertaining to listen to, full of useful knowledge. With everything they've taught me, I'm now 100% committed to growing a large buy-to-let portfolio. And I've just bought my first property at auction. Thanks for all the great advice and keep up the good work. Regards, Adrian. Oh, well done, Adrian. I mean, that's a great review off the back of this week where we talk about action, and you've done that. 4 months of listening to the podcast, into an auction, buying your first buy-to-let. Hats off. Well done.
So this is the part of the show that we call Hub Extra, because we're just giving you a little bit extra, whether that's a tool, a technique, a quote, or today, a conversation. So we're highlighting a conversation that's happening over in the Property Hub forum right now. You can go and get involved in this yourself by going to thepropertyhub.net/forum. And Rob, the reason we're highlighting this is that an unbelievably implausible, impossible thing has happened. There are a number of different people on the internet having a reasonable discussion, which is amazing in itself, but about Brexit.
Yeah, if it wasn't so early in the morning, I'd be pouring myself a glass of red now and weighing in. But luckily, it is morning, so I'll leave the reasonable people to it. And yeah, this is a really interesting thread. People talking about Brexit and obviously the impact on the property market and just what are they thinking about it all. It's really balanced with some really sensible opinions, which, let's face it, you don't always get with Brexit. I will give a few points. One that's kind of developed for me over time as I've calmed down since the result now. And my feeling on Brexit is once it's done, wherever's done, whether we stay, leave, or something in the middle, as far as the property market's concerned, I think once we get certainty again and we know what the outcome is and we can start working with it, I actually think the property market will do very well. You know, we look at the property cycle and we are due a surge in prices. And yes, some areas are starting to experience that, but most places aren't. You know, outside of Manchester and Liverpool and a few other select areas, most of the country isn't really doing much as far as property prices are concerned. And for me, sometimes you need a trigger. And I think the trigger will be certainty. And once we go ahead with whatever Brexit looks like, then I believe the markets will kick on. We'll see. But I think that's the trigger we'll need. Once that uncertainty is removed, people can make plans because they know what we're dealing with and get on with things. And I think that's what's going to play out. We'll see. It's quite a positive view on it, Rob, but which may not come as any surprise, but it is backed up on what we expect the markets to see and do.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in close agreement with Young Joe 80. This is part of his post. He says, Brexit is a mere blip on the horizon. The economic cycle is all powerful. I don't lose any sleep over it and ignore all the media sensationalism. When the economy booms, which it will over the next 5 years or so, we will adapt and Brexit will be forgotten about. And in this thread, there are lots of detailed points about how the market might be affected in different ways. But what I really like about it is the overall sentiment is, well, let's just get on with what we're doing. Because if you want to affect the result, you can't. It's in the past. If you want to affect how politicians are behaving and dealing with it, well, there's nothing you can do about that either. What you can do is put all that aside, have your best guess about the impact it's going to have, and so you make sure that your strategy is still the right one. And then you can just get on with doing it and take action. And really, that's what today's episode's been all about. If the people on our journey had been freaking out about it and spending all day watching the news and worrying about what might happen, well, they wouldn't have done all the brilliant things that they've done since we last spoke to them.
But that's at the end of Hub Extra. Remember, every Friday, to everybody who signed up to the Property Hub, which is free to do, so if you haven't, go ahead and do it, you will get a Hub Extra email in your inbox every single week. And we aim to make it the most valuable email you receive each and every week. So make sure you sign up to the Property Hub if you haven't already to get that and check it out every Friday. It's loaded with loads of useful stuff for property investors.
So that is us done for a week. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. We really, really have. We'll be back again next Thursday, and before then, we are going to have Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday, of course. So lots more goodness coming up for you. In the meantime, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.